All right, so you've probably heard this term carbon trading floating around, right? Especially when people are talking about climate change. It sounds kind of complicated, maybe a little weird. But what is it, really? Well, we're going to break it all down. Because when you boil it all down, this is the big, provocative question at the center of it all. I mean, can you really put a price tag on pollution? It gets right to the heart of why this whole topic is so controversial. Let's dig in. Okay, first things first. Before we get into the whole debate, we've got to understand the basic idea. How in the world does putting a price on pollution even work? So at its core, carbon trading is all about using the free market to help cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. Here's how it goes. First, a government sets a really firm limit. They call it a cap on how much pollution is allowed total. Then companies get permits or allowances to pollute up to a certain amount. And that's where the trading part kicks in. Right. This whole thing is usually called cap and trade, and it's basically a three-step dance. Step 1, the government sets that hard cap on pollution. Step 2, they issue the allowances to companies. And then step 3, and this is the key part, they let them trade. So if your company does a great job and comes in under your pollution limit, you can sell your extra allowances to another company that's struggling to keep its emissions down. A whole market is born out of it. So you might be asking, why go through all this trouble? What's the point? Well, the people who support carbon trading think it's a really elegant solution. They see it as a smart, efficient way to tackle a massive global problem. So let's look at the plus side. Proponents will tell you that it's way more cost-effective than just slapping heavy regulations on every single company. The big selling point is that it gives companies a real financial reason, a cash incentive, to innovate and invest in cleaner tech. Plus, governments can make money from it, and it also kind of names and shames the biggest polluters, which creates a lot of public pressure. And that's really the bottom line for supporters. It all comes down to the financial incentive. Money talks. The idea is that if it becomes cheaper for a company to go green than to buy permits to pollute, well, the choice becomes pretty obvious. It's about using the power of the market for the good of the planet. But, of course, it's not that simple. For every person who thinks this is an elegant solution, there's someone else who sees it as a really dangerous distraction, something that keeps us from doing the real work. Now for the case against it. Critics have some major concerns. First off, what if the pollution allowances are so cheap that it makes more sense for a company to just buy them instead of actually investing in cleaner technology? Then there's the problem of cheating. If the monitoring isn't super strict, companies can find ways around the rules. And because different countries have different standards, it creates this messy patchwork system full of loopholes. And then there's the final and maybe biggest problem. Yeah, that last one is a big deal. This isn't just happening in some corporate boardroom. When companies have to pay for these allowances, where do you think that cost goes? A lot of the time it gets passed right on down to us, the consumers, in the form of higher prices. So you could be the one footing the bill. So when you lay it all out side by side, you can really see the two faces of carbon trading. On one hand, you have the promise of a smart, cost-effective system that encourages innovation. But on the other hand, you've got all these problems, the loopholes, the weak oversight, and the fact that you might end up paying for it. It's a real double-edged sword. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's pretty clear that carbon trading isn't some magic bullet. It's not simply good or bad. It's a really complex tool, one that has a ton of potential, but also a ton of pitfalls. And what's so fascinating is that even with all these very real, very serious criticisms, the idea of carbon trading isn't going anywhere. It is still a central piece of the puzzle in so many plans to fight climate change. It just shows you how powerful and persistent this idea really is. And that brings us right back to the ultimate question. Is carbon trading a vital step in the right direction, a clever way to use the market to save the planet? Or is it just a dangerous distraction, something that lets us feel like we're making progress while we avoid the truly tough choices? The debate is definitely far from over.